Thank you, Chris. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. First item is to have a moment of silence and especially remember the LEAH family. Okay, please join me. Thank you. Okay, pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We haven't heard from Mr. Kurt. All members except Mr. President. Maybe he'll come in. He's running late. We have no one heard from him.
No, I
Okay, so he's running late. Okay, Mr. Stowe.
Right before, if it's okay with the board.
Well, let me jump up to there is C there, adopted agenda.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Right before the board adopts the agenda, if you wouldn't care, if this would be permissible. Today was the first day, or not first day. Today was our new teacher orientation, and normally the board would have been invited to that, but because of the COVID experiences that we have and the number of teachers we have, it was difficult for you all to be there. But we did record each of those individuals, just a brief little thing, a couple of minutes. And if it's okay with you guys, we'd like to share that. That way you can see who the new teachers are. So Chris will set that up for us and we'll be able to see that. So at your convenience, Chris.
Hi, my name is Victoria Sexton and I'll be teaching special education at LES.
Hi, my name is Victoria Sewell and I'll be teaching MSD at Lancaster Elementary School.
Hi, my name is Jalen Anderson and I'll be teaching special ed at LES.
My name is Taylor Long. I'll be teaching 3rd grade at LES.
My name is Joshua Boone and I'll be teaching art at Paint Lick Elementary.
Hi, I'm Twyla Arnold and I'll be teaching special education at Camp Dick Robinson Elementary.
My name is Rebecca Peniston. I'll be teaching 5th grade at Paint Lick Elementary.
My name is Brianna Grant. I'll be teaching 1st grade at Lancaster Elementary.
Hi, I'm Allie Reiner and I'll be teaching 2nd grade at LES.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Bricking. I'm going to be teaching 2nd grade at Lancaster Elementary.
Hi, I'm Nikki Montgomery. I am teaching 6th grade special education at Garrard Middle School.
My name is Chris Phillips. I'm teaching at Garrard County High School in grades 9 and 11.
Hi, I'm Brandon Cooper. I'll be teaching credit recovery at Garrard County High School.
Hi, I'm Brittany Watts, and I'll be teaching kindergarten at LES.
Hi, I'm Brett Meadows. I'll be teaching JROTC at Garrard County High School.
I'm Shelby Clark. I'm teaching at Garrard County High School, Agriculture.
My name is Leah Maddox, and I'm teaching at Garrard Middle School, 6th grade English.
Hello, I'm Ashley House, and I'm teaching 7th and 8th grade at Garrard Middle.
Hi, Diana Bowman, 8th grade math at Garrard Middle.
Hi, I'm Kelly Gillum, the new guidance counselor at Garrard County High School.
My name is Keith Jesse. I'll be teaching math at Garrard County High School.
My name is Allison Hall. I'm going to be the highly structured teacher and special ed teacher for 3rd grade at Camp Dick Robinson Elementary.
I'm Peter, and I'll be a special education teacher at Garrard County High School.
The counselor at high school.
There you go. We are back.
So thank you. Appreciate Ms. Perry doing that this morning. She led the session with the new teachers and organized that so you would have an opportunity to at least know who those folks were. So, all right.
How many were that? And I just need to put a number to that.
18 on there today,
Oh, yes.
I think.
Probably. I can
Yeah.
count. Somewhere around there.
So when you look through the list, you'll see most of the new hires listed for the year, well, so. So you do the agenda.
24.
24 total.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Do you have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make the motion to adopt the agenda.
Mr. McQuarrie makes the motion. I have a second.
I'll second.
Second by Brother Jerry. Discussion. All in favor? All were in favor. Full roll. So you have the minutes on. You were taking the minutes on.
Yes, sir.
Okay, number 2, Mr. Stone.
We have an update from Sherman Carter Barnhart. Kevin Chief couldn't be with us today, so he has sent his proxy.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Justin McElfresh. I'm a partner with Sherman Carter Barnhart. I work with Kevin. We're business partners. Don't hold that against me. But Kevin asked me to come and just give you an update on the projects. Garrard County High School, the exterior door replacement, access controls, and then the intercom system replacement. We had previously received KDE approval on those. Those are ready. We had been waiting on KDE approval of the bus camping project at Camp Dick Robinson. We received that this afternoon. So we're ready. There are just a couple of comments that need to be addressed, but we're ready to go to bid. So we'll be working with Mr. Stahl and the district on coordinating dates and making sure that we've got everything kind of laid out that works with your board meeting dates for approval. I think I talked with Brother Jerry maybe ahead of the board meeting. That process usually will want to have about 3 to 4 weeks for bidding. And then I think Kevin said there will be an associated bond sale. So once we receive bids, we'll come to you guys for formal approval of those bids. And then KDE will typically require about 2 weeks for their review before you can have a bond sale. So we can do an interim contract or whatever we need to do to get things rolling, but you're probably looking at about 6 weeks before construction could commence on those projects. So that'll give you some sense of the timeline there. I know there was also some question about some geotechnical corings that were done at Camp Dick Robinson. It basically showed that the asphalt corings, it was all basically light duty asphalt. So I think Kevin sent Mr. Stahl some recommendations there. Bottom line is we think you could flip to the front. There are some radius, fairly tight radius on the front that you may want to just watch and see if the bus or the wheels make any difference cutting on the asphalt. But basically the pavement thickness in the back is the same as the pavement thickness in the front. So our thought is if you haven't seen a great deal of degradation in the back, then you can probably go ahead and see similar results in the front. Just watch that movement with the vehicles on the pavement and make sure you don't see any premature failure there. So any questions regarding any of that?
Yeah. We used associated bond sale. I was thinking we wasn't doing bonds on this one, are we, Stacy? I thought this was money.
I thought that was money that we had from.
That's my understanding. It was $211,000 that we're getting out of our building fund.
Perfect, and that would definitely, that will expedite things, so you won't have to slow down for that bond sale. So that would be good.
Other questions?
What about the sound system at GMS? I didn't hear you.
I think he said GCHS and it's GMS, but those were both approved.
Oh.
We had those approved previously, so it's good. It was that's fine. It's just we're good.
Well, I heard you say about the doors and everything.
Yeah.
We've got approvals on all the projects now, so
good.
Everything's ready to go.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Further questions? Anybody? No? Okay.
So before we get into the review of the agenda for Thursday, I shared with you all the other day, we'd like you to consider approving the GMS food service surplus. And behind your sheet on the left-hand side, you see pictures, a list of all of the materials. The work has been progressing there, but we can't bring the new ones in until the old ones are out. So if we can surplus today, it gives Brad and his team 4-day jump on Thursday. So we just need a motion and approval of that. If you're willing to do that, then we'll go ahead and start the surplus.
I move to do that.
Okay. I thought if anybody had a question, then we'll go for a motion. Brother Jerry's made a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. McQuarrie. Further discussions now.
What's the process involved with surplus? So we vote to surplus the equipment. What next?
My understanding is we're selling this as scrap metal, and so we'll just go through the process of putting that out. And if we get some money back from it, then we will. If not, I guess we'll let it go to the highest bidder, regardless of what the highest bidder would be in that situation. But it will be. It's not like we're gonna pawn this off on somebody and say, "Here, you can make this equipment work," even though we couldn't. So.
Kind of further question. If you surplus equipment, there's 1 of 3 ways you can get rid of it. Scrap it, bid it, or have an auction.
We're scrapping
That was my understanding. It may say on the document there, scrap, it says scrap, doesn't it?
Scrap metal too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, scrap it and just take it over.
Whoever you take it to, try to find out who's getting the best price that day and go on.
Scrap is scrap. Wherever you get rid of scrap, that's what we do.
That's all you got to work with.
And I did say scrap, not.
Yeah. I heard you correctly.
There are sometimes differences in the prices. Sometimes it's distance travel.
You can shop, but.
Sometimes distance travels doesn't make up for the difference in the price.
Okay, the motion's been made and second. We're ready to vote. All in favor? All in favor?
I texted Mr. Hurt just a while ago, and he just texted me back, and he's running late.
Okay.
All right, the review of the items for Thursday. Of course, the agenda is to your right. If you want to pull that out and follow it, you're welcome to. I'll try to keep you abreast of where we are as we move through. Behind tab number 1 are the minutes from SBDM meetings that occurred at GCHS, CDR, LES, and PLES. Again, it's just a form of communications for you all to have, be able to see what's occurred. Certainly, if we have audience comments, we'll entertain those. And if you all have comments, we'll take those as well. When you get to tab 2, that will give you the list of resignations, hires, and if you flip the page, you'll see the positions that we still have to fill. Actually, one of those has been filled. The Lancaster elementary teacher position next to the bottom has been filled now. So that will give you an indication of what we have left, and those positions are posted, and when the postings close, we'll make every effort to hire the best possible candidate. Tab 3 would be Stacy's treasurer report. So she's here tonight to share that with you. If you have any questions, obviously she'll be able to take those as well.
So for the month of July, we're going to end about at 5.9 million. July is the easiest one because it's the first month of the year, and there's usually not a whole lot of activity. You can look down below, and it's broken out where we're comparing where we are this year to where we were last year at this time, and we're at almost $500,000. If you flip over, we'll look at each fund individually. Our general fund has a balance of $3.6 million with year-to-date receipts of $911,000 and year-to-date expenditures of 586. So we're resulting in a positive net balance of 325,000 for the month of July. Our special revenue fund, you'll notice, is a negative balance, but this is almost always the case because federal funds have to be spent before we get money back. So whatever we spend this month, we get reimbursed back the next month. So we're always going to be in a deficit. That's just how that works. Our district activity fund has a balance of 152,000, and there's very minimal activity there this month. Our capital outlay fund balance is 112,000, and that is made up of our first state allocation. We had a beginning balance of 11,791, and that money was transferred over to our construction fund to be used for the GMS exterior door project. Our building fund has a balance of 558,000, and we received our first state allocation of 610,000. We paid out 55,000 in debt payments and transferred $386,000 over to the construction fund, and that's to be used on the best canopy and exterior door and intercom projects, the GMS. And our construction fund balance is 762,000, and as I said, we had transferred funds over from capital outlay and building fund for current projects that are going on. Our debt service balance is 0 because it's in and out. You pay debt service payments and transfer money over from the building fund and the general fund to cover that. The food service balance is $990,000, and we are still in the process of renovating the GMS cafeteria and kitchen area. That's going to take that balance down just a little bit. Our community education fund balance is $5,400 with minimal activity during the month. And our trust fund balance is $80,000, and there's also minimal activity during the month. So usually the month of July, there's not a whole lot of activity, and we'll continue to see more as we go on.
Questions to the report? I bring this up every month. That Fund 2 is worrying me.
It's always going to be that way.
It hasn't always been that way. It has, because I've watched it. It's growing up 100,000 from last year.
We also have our CARES money in there that we've not got reimbursed yet for.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What else are we doing? Federal monies.
All of our grants we have to spend before we get reimbursed. So we're looking at payroll, anything that we're spending on those grants will get reimbursed next month, which we're always a month behind.
Is there some place in what we have that we can break the details of that special revenue fund out so we could see what's involved?
In the monthly financial report that I sent you all, I emailed it this afternoon. It's broke out by fund, so you can go in and see how much receipts are and how much expenditures are. It's not necessarily broken down by grant, but it's broken down by the local projects, your state projects, and the federal projects. So if you go and look at your federal projects, that's where you're going to see we spent this much money, however, we've received this much.
So I looked at that, but didn't know I didn't know that that's what I was seeing. So I'm going to make an appointment with you so that you can explain that to me a little bit clearer.
Apologize for being late. What happens when you get an easy chair and take, I have no excuse.
We knew something like that. No, I think that's back to her. Dr. Lynch's question, I think that's what we all need.
Well, I provide it every month.
Ms. Conklin, is your money's in that? It's not in Fund 2. Yeah, it's in Fund 2.
Yeah. It's all the grant money.
Federal 1, Title 1, Title 2, and all this 5, 4, 5, 6.
And your CARES Act money too, right? CARES Act.
I think you may be giving it to us and it's not clear. Okay. But for me, that's the case, because I did look at what you sent and I didn't see.
Did you go over all 51 pages?
No, I did not go over all 51 pages.
She told me, I told her the same thing, and she told me to go over all 51 pages in detail.
I'm going to make the appointment and go see her. Show me where to look at it.
That sounds like the same thing.
Okay.
Okay. Go to tab 4, and on Thursday night, Chris will share with you the district cybersecurity report that has to be shared on an annual basis. Again, it's a report to you, doesn't require anything other than us listening to what he has to share relative to that. Tab 5 will be a request for you to approve your minutes from July 13th and July 16th. When we arrive at tab 6, we'll ask you to approve our start for school, which will be interactive distance learning for all students. Originally, as you know, our hope was to offer a choice, but based on the governor's recommendation and my conversation with you all, we could go this past Friday. We all understood the complexity of the request, and so we want to make it official at the board meeting on Thursday that this is how we're starting. That's how we're planning for it. That's how we're prepping for it. And that's what the community is expecting now. Doesn't mean everybody agrees, but that's everybody understands where we are.
So, scenario August 26th, we all start.
Yes, sir.
On interaction.
It's
all K through whatever.
That's correct. Absolutely.
And we will stay there until September 28th.
As of today, September 28th is the first day that we can consider returning to in-person. And of course, we'll monitor any other recommendations and changes from the CDC or local health department or whomever, and keep you all informed of that. Obviously, there'll be another board meeting before that occurs. So the September board meeting will happen prior to that 28th.
I didn't catch Governor Andy's report today, and I got the tail end of it, and I don't know if anything significant happened.
I didn't see today.
When I got to it, he was saying questions, and some of it was school related. He went into the reasoning, I think. We won't go into detail on that.
At this point, I've heard nothing new. So
What's so discouraging about it all is that we're getting told constantly all the negatives of why we can't. I'd like to ultimately get into what can we do to make it work. And that's out of our hands, but I would love for them to get into that discussion.
So I'll share that we're trying to control what we can control. And we've had a significant number of conversations about how we can try to find ways to be in face-to-face contact with students. And what we received today was some official guidance. We were one of the few districts left that had not made decisions to give up the idea of bringing some students in. And today we were informed that we could do that there are some parameters that we have to be aware of, but that we can do it. And when you go through the guidance, it's pretty broad, which we were really glad to see. So if we find that we have students who are struggling when we initially enter this process, there's a way for us to get to them and either bring them to us or us go to them to provide some face-to-face. If we have some kids that need some interventions, thinking specifically of kids at the K2 level who are learning to read, who need some help, we have permission to do that. Again, there are some guidelines that we have to follow. Never can our building be more than 15% capacity at one given time. Never can we have a group larger than 10. Never can we have a teacher who spends more than 2 hours with a group of students. If we use materials for diagnostic purposes or for testing, and it's a material that has to be used multiple times, there has to be time in between the use of the material with one student before it can be used by another. So there are expectations around that. But when you use words like tutoring, when you use words like intervention, it gives a pretty wide scope of what that can be. So if you have a kid who's struggling to learn to read, they need some intervention. And we've been now given the permission to do that. So there's specific guidance around special populations as well. So special populations is not limited to the world of special education. It includes English learners. It includes GT students. So again, pretty broad. And so I spoke with the commissioner last week, and he indicated that this was coming at some point, but we didn't know what that meant. And I reached out to him again today, and he said that there was some guidance being released today, and we literally had it probably within 15 minutes. Wasn't specific for Garrett County. It's specific for anybody out there. So Ms. Congleton and I have had a conversation via email this afternoon, and she has a group of teachers who are ready to buy into it and take off with this to provide services. So we have students who need some special ed supports, related services that we're working on how we can bring them in. KDE's given us the ability to use buses if that's what we choose to do. If somebody can't get to us, the way they phrased it was interesting. If you don't have public transportation, I only know of a couple of places in the state that have real public transportation, so it opened the door for a lot of folks. So why am I bringing that up at this point? Well, we're talking about the opening of school. Mr. Hurt just talked about being positive. And what I'm just describing to you are a number of ways that we're going to try to be very positive about how we can pull this off. So what we want to do is make sure we comply completely with what's expected to show solid evidence of why we should be trusted to make a decision at some point to come back to in-person learning. We want to prove that through each of these steps along the way, we can do that. And so I think that one of the things that we'll be able to share with you as we move forward is the processes that we're using and how we're having those successful interactions with our students and meeting the needs that are out there. Now, we know that it won't be 100% perfect. We're not suggesting that at all. We know that as we step into it, I think I shared this with you all on Friday, the 26th of August will be for almost every teacher in the Commonwealth who's starting on that day, almost like a first day as a teacher, because they're going to be teaching in a way they've not taught before for the most part. And so I think we have to understand that and understand that we're going to come in just as ready as we possibly can be, but I bet you we'll be better at it 10 days into it, because we will have learned what worked well and what didn't. And rather than us say, well, that wasn't good, we're going to go back and say, how do we tweak that? How do we make it better? And so I'm looking forward to being able to share some very positive things about how our staff is figuring stuff out, how our teachers, how our principals, how our psychologists, how our related service providers are all figuring out the processes to get in front of kids and be successful with them. We have purchased 10 hotspots for buses. We're going to work on how we move those through the district to make sure we're providing as much support for folks who don't have access to solid internet. We're working on what it's going to look like to deliver food. And we're not looking at just 8 sites. We're looking at how we utilize our routes to get it to everybody. That doesn't mean the buses will run every single day to those spots. We can move multiple food amounts at any one time. So again, if you're listening to what I'm saying, you're hearing a lot of good things, a lot of positives about how we can step into that and try to figure out how to make it work better. So I think we'll be able to give Mr. Hurt exactly what he was saying and what you all would want us to be able to do as well.
Well, every parent I talk to wants their kid in person. Now, I know that's people who's talked to me, and they've given me suggestions on what you were talking about, how to make it work. And I never thought about this. One of the suggestions that I've been given by parents, why can't we leave the kids in the same room and have the teacher rotate around whatever the next class is? I don't know what would be involved in making a change like that, but that would alleviate the crowd in the hallways.
So it's a conversation that we have had.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, relative to particularly to our elementary grade levels. And to some degree at the middle school. It's a much more difficult task at the high school because of the specific courses the kids need to take. So when you think about a 4th grader who might be in a departmentalized setting, they're all still taking the same courses, and moving the teacher there is much easier than at high school, where you could have somebody taking English 2 who's a sophomore and somebody else who's a junior. So the next math class that they go to may not align. So it's much more challenging to do it there. But it has been a conversation that we have had probably since the very beginning, back in May when we originally started the conversation, because it is thought out there that that's a way of helping alleviate the challenge of the movement.
think it would be important to also take a look at those schools that are going back, and like LCC, Lexington Christian, LCA, Lexington Christian Academy. There's a lot of schools in the state that are going back, but they're operating under a different premise than we are. But it might be helpful to see what they're doing and how they're doing it, and whether it's successful or not. That might give us a place to look for guidance.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. We know that school started last week in a couple of locations, and we'll be keeping a close eye on them. We have some others that are appearing to intend to start, and we certainly will. One of the things that you don't want to do here is ignore the successes that somebody's having or the difficulties that they may be having. But hopefully what we hear from everybody who goes back in is the success stories that they've had and how we can capitalize on that and either tweak the plan that we have or be reassured that the plan we do have is aligned with what they're doing. So I think that's a good thought.
Do we have any active COVID cases
in the county?
In the county.
We do.
We do.
We do.
There's been 88, the last I checked, in one hospitalization in Garrard County. I don't know if that's been updated, you know?
It has been, but I don't have the numbers from the health department. I did talk to them this morning, and I would hate to throw a number out there and be inaccurate with it. It was slightly higher than that, but it was still just the one hospitalization. And they had shared with me that typically, as far as active, we've been around 9 or 10 or 11, somewhere in that vicinity that would be active. But you have the vast majority who've gone through the process who've been recovered as well. And so they have a list. And I'm not sure that we would ever be entitled to anything more than just a summary number of that, you know.
Well,
they are able to share.
Touch names, but this
really
tracing that occurs, will the health department come back to you and say, okay, we trace this person and it's possible he could be in your school? You see what I'm saying? Through kids or through neighbors? Or
they would. Well, the way that would work is odds are if somebody doesn't notify us directly, the health department could know before we know that something has happened. And if they become aware of it, then they will approach us and ask for any information that we could share. So if we were doing it in person, one of the things that we had in place was that everywhere you were, there had to be a seating chart. So that if there was a name that came to us, we would then be able to identify who was in the surrounding area. And then they could determine whether they needed to move forward with that. And what would determine that would be whether or not masks were on or masks were off, how long they were exposed. So when they've walked us through that process, there's some complexity to it, for sure. But our job is not to do the tracing, but to provide some information to help them determine which directions they need to go.
And that would have been the same way if they were riding the bus, there'd be a seating chart on the bus as well.
Yeah, when I met with the bus drivers last week, we talked about the fact that even though we're not opening right now, had we opened, there were certain things that had to occur. For example, no one sits behind the bus driver to make sure that they're not being exposed. You're supposed to load from back to front so that people are not crossing. You then unload from front to back. You designate an area in case someone gets on and you take their temperature and their temperature's above the 100.4. We're not allowed to take them back home because there's nobody there. We have to transport them. So there's a section of the bus that you would have to set aside for that. And so we had in place all of those things, and we would know whether we wanted to or not, we would know who was sitting where. And we had even had that conversation relative to what it would look like to switch buses like we do at PENISTON and at CDR to ensure, because in the past it may have been that a kid got on a bus coming to town, but might not have gotten on the exact same bus every day. Well, one of the expectations this year would have been you would have gotten on the same bus and you would have sat in the same spot. And that way, if there was a question, we could have gone back and talked specifically about who that was.
I'm surprised at the high school today how quickly that can be done. Every person that just came into the high school got their temperature checked and just took about 2 seconds.
So we've been doing that at all of our locations for the last week. So when you walk into a location, you should be checked. If you're not, let me know, because that's what we want to do. We want to comply with what we need to comply with. Last week I went to just to tell you that, to be completely honest, I walk into Lancaster. I got in my vehicle at the board office. It had never had a chance, obviously, to cool down between the board office and getting to LES. Parked as far out as I could and walked. And when I got up, they said, "Where'd you walk from?" And I said, "Over there." And they shot me. I was 100.2. And there was nothing wrong with me. Every time I went someplace else, I'm 97 something. But that had happened. But they were checking me, and they wanted to make sure. Just because I happened to be the superintendent of school, they didn't say, "Come on in." They checked me and they said, "You can have to go stand over here for a while, cool down, make sure." So what I'm telling you there is our folks are doing their very best to make sure that there are no exceptions to that. So today at the high school, we had a parent who didn't want to put a mask on. So they had established a location on the other side of the building. The other side sounds bad. They were bringing them in from the student parking lot, so they brought them around to the front of the building. And at the front of the building, they had set up a table and they were able to do everything with that parent. But they didn't allow the parent in because they weren't going to comply. So you have a staff out there who's working really, really hard to comply with what goes on, because we don't want a failure to be driven by a human decision that we make. We'll have enough decisions being made by other people that we don't want it to be on us. So kudos to the staff who say, doesn't matter who you are, we're taking your temperature. Kudos to the staff who said, you choose not to put the mask on, we're going to walk you around here. Kudos to the staff who says, we're going to do what we're asked to do. And that's a huge plus, because that's what opens up the door for us to eventually get back in.
Yeah, very good. Any questions?
Well, I would just like to say that I know that the folks in the district are working really hard to try to figure out how to give our kids a good school year. And as a board member, I feel a little distant to it, but at the same time, I know that you're working really hard, and I just want to say that I appreciate that and support it. So,
well, I will tell you
it's a lot of work.
I'll tell you that you had 6 schools last week just doing things that we could have never expected them to do in the past, and they're doing it with smiles on their face, and they're excited about the opportunity because they see it as opportunities to impact kids. You know, teachers are difference makers. And when we forget that, we really miss out on something. And so you have a group who are working hard, not for us, but for students. And I think it would be remiss, and I appreciate you saying that, Dr. Lane, for me not to say to you today how hard that staff is working. And they really are. They really, really are. And like I said earlier, we have veteran teachers who are phenomenal teachers who are trying to learn a whole new avenue of delivery instruction that they wouldn't have had to think about before. And somebody had shared with me, you know, there are some places for people who are retiring because they just don't want to go through it. And we have people who are just buckling down and trying to figure it out. I don't know how much you all pay attention to stuff, but if you don't know what a Bitmoji is, you probably better figure it out, because you've got teachers out there who are creating Bitmojis. So when you go in and look at their virtual website, there's a figure standing there. It looks pretty similar to them to make those connections with kids. So, you know, seriously, you've got people working really, really hard.
Every teacher I talked to today, I asked them if they were ready to teach virtual, and they said, yeah.
Well, I appreciate your work, and I wish there was something I could do to help more.
Well, you have your own challenges with yours, and everybody else does, so you all understand it. But kudos to our staff. Tab number 7, and we'll probably spend a little bit longer here today than I originally thought, just to make you aware. One of the things that I shared with you today was that we have been informed that we need to submit a new facilities plan. And in order to do that, we need KFIX to be in place. So the document that you have in front of you now is from Kevin Cheek, and it's how Sherman Carter Barnhart would work to help us through the process of KFIX. The front page will tell you the cost for that, and the back page will tell you the reimbursement that we would get when we went through the facilities planning. However, I'd like to diverge from that just a little bit before we do that. So Mr. Woods asked me on Friday to check on the possibilities. Is there such a thing as basically a retainer for an architectural firm like we would have with our attorney. So I reached out to Kevin on Friday, and we've had 2 conversations about it. Number one, there doesn't appear to be something quite like that right now, but if we want him to pursue a conversation with KDE around that, because it will be built around a fee structure that exists at KDE. But as Mr. Woods was thinking about it, it might be a way to help over the course of our life with them to offset some of these kinds of costs, like you would with an attorney. So worst case scenario, KDE would come back and say no. Best case scenarios, they come back and say this is how it would work, and then you'd have a decision to make about whether you wanted to go that route or not. So that's kind of where we are with that. At the same time, because it's a facility planning time, I reached out to Mark Riles to ask Mark, who understands the process really, really well, if he would consider facilitating our planning. And Mark sent an email back to me. He said, I don't do that anymore. But he said, my advice to you is that you request a waiver. He said, the reason you should request a waiver is because I was part of the last facility plan. He said, I think you have far more things to be worried about right now as a board and as a school than completing the facility plan if your facility plan continues to have in place everything that you would want it to have in place. So he said, I would check with KDE. So I reached out to KDE and had received information back from them that they do not show right now that there has been a waiver request, and that we certainly could request a waiver. Now, having said that, they assigned me to an individual who was not in this week. So I can't confirm that until next week. The individual looked it up, said there was no waiver in front of them at the time. So based on that language, I would tell you that if we wanted to request a waiver, that may be a possibility, but I can't tell you that KDE told me officially that we could do that. I have to speak with another individual around that. So again, I'm sharing that so that you get a full context here of the whole picture before we go down a path here. So if you flip to page 8 temporarily, to tab 8 temporarily, you'll see your previous district's facilities plan. And everything on it is tagged as a level 1, with the exception of the bus garage, which is number 4. And the bus garage can never be a 1 because it's not about students directly. It's an indirect piece. So from Mark's perspective, he felt like that if this was the plan you wanted, you could probably request a waiver if KDE would approve it. Then you could be in a spot, instead of writing a plan that may be almost identical to what you have here, that you could move forward with it. And then if we needed to update it over the course of time, we could come back and do an update as we went forward. So it's a long way to go through the process to say on Thursday night, under tab 7, we may or may not want to make that decision. Now, you could make that decision pending information that I find out on from KDE next week. And we could put in place the ability to move forward. If KDE says, no, you cannot request a waiver, you have to do it. So we could be prepared to move forward if that's what we needed to do. Or you could agree to say, if they say a waiver and it allows you to get from your facilities plan what you've wanted, then we can say, we just hold, request the waiver, and move forward. Now, Mark offered to help us through the waiver process to make sure that we did everything that we needed to do there. So he was fine with that part of it. So I'll be quiet and let you ask any questions that you might have, and if I don't have the answers, I'll find the answers for you.
So what you're talking about, you talk about a retainer for Sherman Carter Barnhart. Is that what you're talking about, is that different than the board approving them as our district architect?
Well, I think you probably end up having to approve somebody before you did a retainer like that. And so I think we're really talking about a number of different things here that we're kind of lumping all together because they're interconnected, right? So I'm not at this point suggesting that on Thursday you'd be able to talk anything about a retainer, because that's not out there. Kevin can investigate it and come back and tell us what he is able to find out about it. So that's not on the table, but it was driven by the fact that we would be conceivably asking you to approve a cost to have the K-Fix completed. And so what Mr. Woods, I don't need to speak for you, but But what he was saying was if there was an avenue for us to pay on a more consistent basis to avoid having to pay these chunks, that it might in the long run be a cost savings to the board to do that. We can't fix that, but we're going to investigate it for future opportunities that might be out there. Second piece is a decision by this board on Thursday whether you want to move forward with the new facility plan. And if you make the decision to move forward with it, you can do that. And I can stop any conversations with KDE about a waiver, and we can just move forward with that. And I'll walk you through what that committee needs to look like tonight so that that can be built. Or you could say, let's investigate what's going on about a waiver, and I can do that for you. And you could even make a decision that says, we're approving this pending what you find out from KDE. And if you find out that we can request a waiver, then we're approving that. We can have a special call meeting if we need to do that to come back together and talk specifically about this. So you have a lot of options right now and a lot of lack of clarity, because the one conversation that we need to have, we can't have this week. So that's really kind of what we're talking about.
If we were to do that, ask for the wait and see about the waiver, or are we just kicking the can?
So that's what I was saying. You have the choice on Thursday of approving this pending, and then withdrawing the approval if we're given the permission to move forward. If you approve it, if you look at tab 8 and flip to the second page, I've provided for you a list of what has to be on the local planning committee. So you have to have 20 members because we're a district of 4 schools or more. I serve as a non-voting member. Then we have to have 4 parents, 4 teachers, 4 building administrators, district facilities director, a central office staff member, 3 community leaders, a board member, and a local building and zoning official for the total of 20. So what we can do is go ahead and build this. And if we cannot get the waiver, we already have it in place and can move forward. So we kick it down the road for a couple of days as opposed to a couple of weeks. But as I said, if you would prefer to get all of that information and us do a special called board meeting to hear it all so that you can make the decision based on all that information, then we can do that. We can set up a meeting as soon as we have the feedback that we would need from KDE. So what I'm telling you is between now and Thursday, you got a lot of opportunity to think about how you'd like to approach that. And what you have in front of you too is a facility plan so that you can ensure that you're making a decision based on what the facility plan is. Commissioner Burton.
I've got a couple of questions. What's the standard that is set out there for KDE?
Relative to?
Facility plan and how many years of facility plan is good for?
So that was why I reached out to them to ask, right? And I think what it is 4.
Every 4 years you had to do it. Mm-hmm. Well, it's been 5 for the thing, one that was approved.
Which is why I asked the question, if we had already done an approval, waiver.
From the best of my understanding, last year, we were asked to waive it.
To have a waiver. We did.
And we waived it. So that
So
makes
why
it.
is
They don't have a record. Well, if they don't have a record, it doesn't exist.
Well, this board voted to do a waiver.
We did.
In 2019.
So how long was your waiver? Was it a 1-year waiver?
1 year waiver.
Okay. And they should be able to tell me that. So that's why I prefaced what I said earlier. The one individual that I spoke with said she could not see a waiver request, but she referred me to someone else. And so I have to talk to them before I could ever tell you that you have even the possibility of doing a waiver.
I would not be surprised if we didn't ask for it. For whatever reason, but the board voted to have it.
You mean we voted to do it and it wasn't followed through on?
But that's another story, and that's from the past. But that's what's causing some of the confusion, I think, and that's the best I remember it. And by the day on here from the state, it was the one that we have now was June of 2015. So June of 2020 would be 5 years. So it's already a year over the 4 years. And now it would be, if we asked for another waiver, it would be 2 years over. So that's where I'm not optimistic that they're not gonna find a waiver on it.
And it's fine, they may. Again, that's why I think you all would have to make a decision on Thursday, either to go ahead and approve and move forward unless a waiver is possible, and we won't know that till next week. And if you're uncomfortable with that, that's why I'm making the suggestion, and one of the things you could do is then get all of this information, have a special call board meeting, and go over all of it. But that's a decision for Thursday. So we spent way more time on this than we originally thought, because we didn't have an answer for this. So it was on Friday afternoon, after I talked to some of you, that Mark contacted me and had an opportunity to share only with one of you at that point in time that I needed to check with KDE and find out about the waiver. So now all of you are up to speed and know what's going on.
All right. I got a couple questions. First of all, it's to Sherman Carter. You're Justin.
Yes.
Justin, how many K-fixes are you all doing?
How many are we doing?
Yeah, how many districts? Just rough.
I think presently we're finishing up like 3 or 4.
Are you their architect?
Yes. Most of the
That's
time.
where I'm coming from. See where I'm at?
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Are you charging that fee? Is that when K-Fix came in, what, 2-3 years ago?
Yes.
That allowed architect firms to charge that fee for figuring square feet?
So the standard KDE fee for district facility plans have typically been 5 cents per square foot. So however many square feet you have in a district, it's 5 cents. However, typically for us, once we have input the information, it's just an update every time we update your district facility plan. So it's not 5 cents per square foot worth of effort. So we typically negotiate that and figure out a fair fee. The difficulty is the new KFIX, which is the Kentucky Facility Inventory Classification System, which is basically a new software program that KD is asking every district to input all of this information into. It's a tremendous effort. And that you can probably see from the fee agreement that Kevin had forwarded to the district. That's the bulk of the work for us. It's just getting the existing information into the system. It actually requires that we visit physically every space in the district, not every building, every space within that building. So there's an effort there. Not only do you have to do that, there's really 2 kind of components to the KFIX system. There's the asset planner, which is during the district facility plan, we would always do an analysis or an assessment of your building condition. This kind of formalizes that process, but it breaks it down into different components, even by space, but also by building section. So it's not just, if you have a building that was built in 1980, but it was added onto in 1990 and again in 2000, it's almost treated like 3 buildings instead of 1. So it's just a compounded work effort really there, just to at least get the information in there. Now going forward, once the information is in there, I do think it could be an asset not only for districts such as yours, but also for the state at large. But you know, it's kind of that mandate that they've put down to the local level to get the information in there.
You answered part of my question.
Right.
In 2015, when we did our facility plan, we did the data, and I think Sherman Carter did it.
Okay.
Now, floor space, square footage, so forth has not changed.
Correct.
So that data is out there, but the fee of 5 cents a square foot is coming on because you're required by law to visit every square footage.
So not by law, and what Katie will tell you is they're not requiring any district to do the KFIX, but they're strongly encouraging it. You can actually do, much like our recent, but you can actually do a district facility plan the old way. So if you said, we don't want to do the KFIX right now, I mean, there's nothing that says you have to do it right now. But at some point, they're going to expect you to have it completed, and at some point, they're gonna start having some kind of, not penalty, but there will be some kind of ramification for not having your K fixed.
Now you've answered that. And I'm going to what I talked to Mr. Stowe about. Now you see where I'm going with this? If every district is going to have this as a requirement in facility plans, then we need to write our contracts with our architects to engulf this. And the KDE and the state board needs to back that, because school districts can't. You know, I know it's 30,000 minus 18,000, whatever.
Right.
So it's net 12. That's $12,000 that we had thought.
Sure.
Minus 12 cost the district 18,000.
18,000.
It'll cost our
Vice
district
versa.
18,000 to do a new
So,
detention.
you know, that kind of slapped me in the face when I saw that on Friday. I'm thinking, what? So I'm thinking of ways that we need to really help our school districts here, because this is not helping us at all.
And I understand that, and, you know, to be quite honest, it puts us in a difficult
It
position.
does.
Because we have working relationships with our clients that we've developed over the years. We're put in a spot where, you know, somebody has to do it. You know, you guys probably don't have some districts are actually trying to do it with their own personnel, which is really very, very
That's a
difficult.
question too.
And when you're walking into spaces, I mean, we have engineers that help us actually to determine what systems are in existing buildings and what needs to be done to those to update, what kind of condition they're in. I can't imagine putting that on one or two individuals in a district to take on in addition to the tasks that they're already assigned. But it puts us in a spot where, you know, we don't want to charge you guys any more than we have to, but we actually have somebody in our office that has been doing these things. Amoresco is who developed the software that everyone uses. The guy in our office actually gets calls from Amoresco at times because he's been solely working on these things for over 3 years now, just inputting information. That's 40 plus hours a week, 52 weeks a year, less his vacation and holidays. But I mean, it's an effort not only for you guys, but across the state.
I want you to hear this. This district has got the third nickel, which has allowed us some futuristic planning.
Yeah.
And, you know, this economy, things like that, has also got us on the edges of what if. But we have some need here. And I don't know, can't speak for all 5 board members. And whether we need to move forward with this process or wait again. And we haven't determined if we did want to proceed, what is our first building project that we need, and so forth, so forth. So, board, do y'all have any discussion or questions with this? Well, we got Mr. Stowe that's locked in, and Mr. McElfresh.
It's a mouthful. You can't say it any way that I haven't heard it. I've heard it all kinds of different ways.
So when I was looking at this, $18,000 seems like a lot of money for us to spend right now. And I looked at the facility plan that we currently have that was developed back in 2015, and it doesn't look like we've accomplished a whole lot of getting these jobs done. There's still jobs that need to be done and we want. I don't know how much this facility plan would change for us if we spent that $18,000 to get it retyped and data put in a database somewhere in Frankfurt. So I feel like we're spending the $18,000 just to get some data plugged and chugged into some database somewhere in Frankfurt, and our facility plan is going to remain the same. We're still going to have exactly the same needs that we have already written on this piece of paper.
That's true, because we haven't done anything.
So
we have done something.
There's a few things. These new construction projects that we found construction fund money for are actually listed on here. The canopies, intercom security, there's a few pieces on here that we've been able to find the funds in our construction fund to pay for, so we can check them off the list, but the big projects are still the same big projects that we would like to see completed in our district, so.
Which is why I was telling you that Mark Riles was suggesting perhaps the waiver,
Yeah,
because it avoids the cost
yeah,
if a waiver is available. What you don't know today is whether that waiver is available, right? And so that's the missing piece to this. However, somebody asked me on Friday about our bonding potential. So what I just handed to you is our most current bonding potential as of this morning. Okay, this is information as of this morning. And what I can tell you, and then I'll defer to Stacy, because Stacy's much more adept at this than I would be, but you have more bonding potential today than you thought you did, which could be a reason to consider a waiver as well, right? How do you get into the use of this? And so, Stacy, if you want to walk them through this material relative to where the bonding potential is today.
Okay, we spoke with our bonding, our fiscal agent this morning, and our numbers have went up because we did get that third nickel equalized. So as of today, we currently have $26 million of bonding capacity. In 2 years, our nickel's going to be fully equalized, which is going to take our bonding capacity up to $32 million. And I believe several months ago, whenever Mr. Interest had presented you with our numbers, we were looking at $18 million. So we went up quite a bit just because of the third nickel match.
I believe there's also an indication that the interest rates would be significantly lower right now as well. So the dollars that you have matter more currently. I believe, yeah, you have an interest rate look on the second page on the back of the first page there. And you can see the difference that was marked from April 8th to August the 7th. So it's fairly significant.
Our total facility plan is $42,700,000.
Which might not be accurate anymore because of the length of time that you've looked at here.
So one of the things, as far as new construction on your facility plan, that is generated on a cost per square foot, and they update those numbers on a yearly basis. So that would increase some, but overall, your district facility plan that you currently have is pretty comprehensive. You know, there's a lot of need that has been established on there.
Well, it makes sense to me. I don't know about the rest of you. Go the route you suggested. To approve this pending for whether or not we can get a waiver. Does that make most sense?
yeah. So if, just to make sure I understand, Jerry, if they will approve a waiver, then let's ask for the waiver. And if we decide to take action on the facility plan that we currently have and not develop a new one. Is that what you're saying?
No.
No? What are you saying?
I thought we had to, if we don't get a waiver, we had to develop a new one.
Yes, but pending approval for a waiver, then we move forward with a waiver and we don't have to develop a new facility plan. We can keep the one we've got if we get a waiver.
But what happens if we don't get the waiver?
If we don't get the waiver, then it sounds like we have to move forward.
And that's what I'm saying.
So you would still have the choice then of how you move forward. Do you move forward using K-Fix, or do you move forward in the traditional fashion? And so again, that would be a choice that you all can make based on the information that you have in front of you, right? So if you were thinking about the idea of the 18,000, there's an avenue that's been shared with you about how you could circumvent that. At some point, I agree, Katie is going to have an expectation that we have it. If that expectation is not current, then it gives you some flexibility. So you have a number of options that are out here. So
one question. I don't believe it's been discussed. I will make my necessary. But, will that have any effect on the bonding potential?
K-fix or not K-fix?
Yeah.
So the only thing that, well, the only thing that could potentially affect it is when the state establishes the need and they decide that they, the whole purpose of doing a district facility plan is to make the need for Garrard County as high as you can get it. You guys have, $42 million worth of need already established on there. So while some of those numbers may go up a little bit, some of the things will be coming off as well, like the smaller projects that you've been able to do, that cost would come back off. Then the cost per square foot for building additions and things would go up. So you may see a little bit of a jump in your need, and thereby you would get a little bit bigger match from KDE when they hand out the state funds. But I don't think it would be substantial enough to force you to have to jump through all these hoops if you didn't feel like it was necessary at this time.
I think I agree with where you're coming from is does approval and money, so forth, hinge upon us following their recommendation. If we don't jump through the hoops, is there a possibility that we get our hands slapped and not get what we really want?
I think that would be the decision that you have to make if we don't have a waiver. If everybody's saying a waiver is the way to go, and if a waiver doesn't happen, then you have to come back and consider that. So part of my obligation would be to ask some questions of some folks at KDE to give you the answer that you're looking for there. And I don't have that answer for you today because we haven't pursued that at this point, but we can and we will. We'll find out the answer, which again, I'm not a fan of special call board meetings, but I think rather than potentially make a decision that has unless or if and all those things put in, it would be easier to consider having a meeting where we all came back together and here was all of the information that you needed to look at, so that if there was, I think you could make the decision if a waiver is available, we move forward. If lacking a waiver, then we have a special call meeting to look at what all the information was so that you're making a decision on current information, not on what might or might not happen. Does that make sense?
I don't think anybody here minds coming back for a special meeting and do what's in the best interest of our school system.
So, when we get there Thursday, I think that that's a decision that you all can make, that we move forward if we're permitted to do the waiver, and then we call a special meeting to make a determination on how you deal with this without it.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
Okay. So somebody remember how to make that motion on Thursday.
Write it down.
Just write your word.
Write it down.
Just make your word.
We're good.
So, yeah.
We're good.
The word work here.
Yeah.
But I don't think there is any slapping hands or slapping whatever, because if there's no law, they can't slap your hand, that's for sure.
Well, tab 9 would be approval of the Head Start grant approval with Community Action Council. We've now received the updated contract, and as I shared with you, our attorney had reviewed this and sent it back, and so we received it back today. On Friday, we couldn't put it in front of you, but it is here today. We feel fairly comfortable with where we are. Well, I feel comfortable with where we are. If I use the word fairly, as I'm Pat's question, what's fairly mean? We are comfortable with where we are with this. Our attorney made sure to do some things to align this more appropriately with individuals within the district rather than the board as a title. And so we don't believe, based on what he shared with us, that very many people have ever reviewed this contract before. So you probably have a tighter contract than anybody else in the state. What do you say, Ms. Conlon? So, and that's good for you. That means your attorney did what you're supposed to do. He's your attorney and he took care of you in this situation. So we will ask you, I will ask you to approve this contract when we get to that spot. Tab number 1 for you in green will be a change of the job description. The job description on the front shows curriculum resources teacher, And the problem that we had with that job description was it says it's a report to the superintendent. And as you look at numbers 15 and 16, you'll see that it connects back to central office and the superintendent. That was never the intent of this job description. It was supposed to be at a building level. So when you flip the page, what we have for you is a curriculum resource teacher. This time reporting to the principal, and 15 and 16 saying reporting to principal. That's what it should be. It's the way it ought to be. And I will ask you to approve that because that was one of the things that you asked me to do was clean up job descriptions. So this is a single one, but it is a cleanup that we became aware of, and it's an appropriate thing for us to do. Tab number 2 says the word salary, and it's really connected to the second page. I'm going to ask you to approve a waiver of this policy 03.121 because we have 3 individuals who have completed coursework that would give them a rank increase, but because we have to wait on EPSB to process that, there's the outside possibility that it wouldn't be back by the September 15th deadline. So we're not asking you to do anything other than ensure that the folks who made this request of EPSB, should EPSB be slow in processing, that we would still honor their rank change for the coming year. It really impacts 3 teachers. Let me make sure I'm not skipping anything here. I inadvertently skipped one, and I apologize. If you look at 5D, we got into the conversation about facilities and jumped right over that back to the contract for Head Start, so I apologize for missing that. I was going to make a request of you to allow us to station buses that do paint lick and CDR runs at those schools for 2 reasons. One, right now, since we're not making runs, anything that we do with buses can begin and should begin at the schools where they're working from. And the second reason is if we go back to in-person, when we go back to in-person and we're running buses, when the buses finish their run at night, we need to be able to ensure that it's been disinfected using materials that we have available at those schools. So it would add potentially some cost for us because we'd start a bus at a location that might have to run out to where it starts and come back. But I think for the 2 purposes that we just shared, that's the appropriate thing to do. One of them, there will be no additional cost because it would be starting from where it needed to start anyway when we're in a distance. And the second one is we have to ensure, as we were talking about earlier, that we make sure those buses are clean to the level that they need to be. And we have spray packs that we have at each of the schools that make that possible. So when a bus finishes a run in the mornings, they would be able to spray it down because they finish at a school. And when they finish at night, if they were finishing at their home location, they wouldn't have access to that. So we would want to make sure that we had that. So that's why that request will be coming to you. There's no document showing that. It's just a request, okay? So I apologize that I got that out of order. The next one, tab 3, Mr. Woods asked that we consider a pay raise for certified staff. So we worked on what that would look like, and we also included all classified, but we also know that you've given a pay raise to some, so we would go back and remove those individuals from it. That full cost, including some people that we would eventually pull, was $155,688 to do a 1% raise. That meant we needed to find funds to do that. And if you flip to the second page will show you the savings that we have as we've moved into our nursing, our healthcare contract, and you'll see that it's pretty close. Within $900 basically of that. So if it was the decision that you made to do that pay raise, then it's close to a wash based on that. And as long as we maintain the contract with the nursing organization, then that would stay. If it's at any point we ever had to go back to our own nurses, then that would be an additional cost that we would pick up.
Is that nursing contract year to year, or
It is.
we'd have to prove that every year?
And I think we would want to. I think we would want to go back and ensure that what we've done here provides us with what we really thought we were getting and what we needed, and provided the care for our students and our staff.
So I'm trying to figure out what groups of people we will have left out. Because I still think there are a fair number of folks in the district who are not going to benefit from a raise. So we've given, just thinking through the past few board meetings, what groups have been given a raise. And now we're looking at a 1% for classified. And certified. So you're including classified and certified in this 1%. So there won't be a group of people that we've neglected to pay attention to.
When we finish this, and Stacey, you correct me if I'm wrong, there's nobody in the district who has not received a pay raise from the time that we started this process. The exception, and it's a good exception, is that I'm not on that scale. So I'm not receiving a raise. I wouldn't have wanted a raise, shouldn't have a raise. So it's good. You can literally say that you would have touched everybody in the district. If that's what you're looking for, then that gives you the ability to do it. Probably doesn't give you the ability to do it at a level that you would have liked to have done. You know, I think everybody always is thinking, how do we do more? But this does do something, and it does do something in the most cost-neutral system that I think you could have done based on what's happened here.
So I asked that question when I met. You know, we just gave the cafeteria food service folks the raise and the bus drivers. And I asked Mr. Stull if they were included in this, and he said, is that what you were talking about? They've been removed from this.
So when we ran the numbers initially, they were included. So that 155 that you're seeing is higher than what it would actually end up being, because we would need to go back and make sure that we did not include them in that. So it's not, there's not an intent to give a second.
Yeah, and there's nobody been left. Well, my objective was to see if there was anybody left out, and this covers everybody remaining.
Yeah, I had the same question. I thought about instructional aides, but that's under professional classified, right?
Anybody who's under a contract with us would be receiving.
Yeah, it includes our bus drivers, it includes our bus monitors, because I know they're.
Yes, I got all those.
Again, as long as they're under a contract with us, then they're covered.
See, I think this is so timely because of the fact that the challenges are greater than they've ever been. To try to do what we were able to do in person, and because of so much, so many resources are being used, and so much, I guess, just trying to think out of the box, try to make it work. To me, it creates justification for this.
And even though it's 1%, that's minimal. I wish we could do much more than 1%. But given that we've come up with a contract to be able to provide the nurses, and we're saving the district those dollars, then I think it's appropriate to put it back in the hands of the people doing the work. So
How long has it been since teachers have had a raise?
8 years.
8 years.
So.
And I had a bus driver tell me she'd worked in the district 11 years and had not had a bus monitor. 11 years in our district with no raise.
I have one question before I forget to ask it. In the nurses' salaries, and I'm not going to use names at all, but the format that the mountain, what's the organization? Nursing.
Boy.
So, I mean, I like to embed that. It's not mountain, because that's something else. Okay, that's okay. Let's just call it a health lunch. Or nursing. That one salary there, will their format have a person that is going to be listed with that salary? It's not going to be that way.
Their first health care is the name.
Right.
Okay, that's what they're called. And they're going to provide 5 nurses, and then Dr. Lynn, what's that nursing position that you have? That's
A nurse practitioner.
Yeah, nurse practitioner.
And they're all gonna be in the same boat here,
Well,
same, in that world. Okay, sure, that's what I wanted to make sure.
We'll have a nurse in every school building.
That's right.
Nurse
Yeah, and then a
practitioner.
nurse practitioner who does clinic days in all the school buildings and rotates around.
Oh, okay. That's right. Okay.
I'd like to clarify something.
Sure.
I may be confused about years and months, although I did have a cognitive test when I went to the doctor, and you'll be glad to know I did pass it, maybe somebody else. But we've had 4% raises for teachers.
I'm sorry?
We've had 4% raises since.
We had a mandate raise and
3%.
that was 8 years ago. I think maybe you're right. There was a 1% something.
And there was a 1%.
That's right. Maybe
so
6 years ago.
This is still justifiable.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
argue 20%.
I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying.
That's right. We did.
I don't want anybody to think I've been pikers in the last 6 years.
So I'm not going to jump into it because I don't know.
No,
and
no.
that's
1% is not a lot.
Well,
It's
no,
it's
we're
not.
discussing, we're going back into what's the goal to achieve the raises without the motions. It was a substantial increase from what they were doing before. They came into the system would be exempt from this. It's not actually across the board.
The 1% is not across the board if you look at it from that perspective. But
Exactly.
It's across the board for everyone who has not received a raise. So that in the scope of everything this year, you would have impacted every person's salary in some
My
capacity.
concern has been there's been a growing gap. And
So-
it has grown in the last 6 years that I know for sure. That gap has increased. And the ones on the bottom have gotten farther away from the ones at the top, and I know there's a difference, a reason for that. But coming from manufacturing and working industry, the federal government even raises the bottom sometimes and don't raise the top. Sometimes they raise the top and don't raise the bottom too. But, if that gap keeps
Being attuned to job descriptions here and making sure we update them.
Exactly.
And we have to evaluate the job description according to salaries.
If we can keep our salaries and our costs for pay raises and things, where our people are not at the very bottom. That's, I think, is one reason we've done some things, but we have some that are up pretty high above the middle and some that are way down below the middle. And we're trying, I think that's the reason there's been some targeted raises. And trying to justify, and like you said, working with our job descriptions and what the people have to do to make the money. And comparing that to other districts is the best way to do it, not just across the board. So that's how I see it. I mean, and I agree with Dr. Lamb very much so, that I think she was very, very right on the money as far as making sure that those monitors and people like that are getting something and not left out and left behind.
I don't think there's a way that if you all approve this, that anybody's been left out. So, I don't know how many times that's happened or anything like that, but we're just talking about the current situation and you would be addressing that. So one of the things that the central office want to make sure that I make you aware of, in order to ease the level of work that would happen if you had an individual who started with one salary and had a salary change in mid-year, is that we'd like to make this retroactive back to July 1. It really doesn't impact anything, if I'm saying that correctly, because they've not had any salary yet.
Our 12-month
12
employees have, and then we're a few days in by the time that it passes, because our teacher started. So, but in order to not have every employee having 2 separate contracts and then 2 separate sets of retirement reporting, it just would make it a lot simpler on our end.
So when we make the motion on Thursday, you would make a motion to do this retroactive to July 1.
You need to put that in the minutes.
Right, and that's why I'm saying the motion will need to say it, so that when you vote it, it's into the minutes, and it makes it possible for them to do the work that they would be doing.
Got that,
Connie's writing it down.
We good there?
We good.
Okay. Tab 4, this is a KSBA policy update around the area of Title IX. And it's a unique one because we're asking you to approve it on an emergency read. I've included with this in your board policy that gives you the ability to do that. And I've included the email from KSBA asking us to do that. And I would encourage you to do it. With the area of Title IX, that's a federal level piece. There is, as we understand it, a lawsuit that's out there, and it could be recalled at some point, but until it is, we have to move forward because it actually went into effect on the 14th. So when you all meet on Thursday, we'll just ask you to do that. It'll be this emergency read and make it active, basically. And tab 5 is because you have a new superintendent that has to go through new superintendent training. What you have in front of you is a requirement that I have for this year. I have to address all 7 of the new superintendent standards. After this year, you could require me to continue to do that, or you could begin to target the standards that you would want me to work on, but you don't have the option this go around. I have to address all 7. So since I have to address all 7, they're in front of you, and I've listed it under each standard, a goal that I would have or goals that I would have relative to that, the actions that I plan to take to see those things occur. And that third column with evidences and artifacts would be something that I would provide to you following completion of any of those types of things. So as a new superintendent, I have a group of people who work with me, as they do with every new superintendent. And they have had an opportunity to review this and give me their thumbs up, but their thumbs up doesn't count. It's your thumbs up that has to occur. So you can review those, ask any questions that you have about them. There's a 30, 60, 90-day plan that I have to submit to you as well. If you approve it on Thursday, then this goes into my portfolio. At the end of the year, I will be doing a project, a capstone project for you that will kind of summarize all of this. Mr. Woods has agreed as the board chair, the former superintendent, to serve on my committee. And so he is aware of that. It's not a huge number of expectations for him, but he's aware of what's going on there. And I appreciate him agreeing to do that. So questions that you have for me tonight?
I had a question about this one thing on here.
This one thing?
Taking off for 3 weeks with the family or something.
Oh, well, that's probably not enough. I'll go back and make it 4. How about that?
Okay, do we have any questions? I think we've come to the end, haven't we, Mr. So?
We have, unless you all have other questions.
Good job tonight.
A little long, but there was some important conversation that you needed to have relative to the facilities case.
And again, I apologize for the
Well, we went on without you. So.
We
All
all
these
wish.
been accepted, so don't worry about it no more.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. McQuarrie, second by Mr. Hurd. All in favor? All were in favor.
Good to meet you, sir. Good to meet
Off
you.
the record, there is a virtual